Hello, my name is Rob Fowler. I'm a senior student money advisor in student services at the University of Derby. And what we're going to do this evening for the next 25 minutes, followed by a Q&A, is just have a look at undergraduate student funding. So what's available, how you apply, how you repay. So we'll go through, from start to finish, hopefully exactly what you need to look out for and be aware of. Just a brief few words on growth and opportunity within university and the sector. So we know that individuals who choose to attend university earn substantially more over their lifetimes compared to those who do not, regardless of region. We know that by age of 31, graduates from the East Midlands earn 37% more than non-graduates from the same region. And graduate skills, importantly, are estimated to have an economic impact of £95 billion nationwide and £7 billion in the East Midlands area alone. Next slide, please. Okay, so student funding, your two main costs each year at university are your tuition fees and your living costs. Tuition fees, that's the amount of money that you need to pay to the university to be on the course that you're on. And we know that from September 2025, fees are going to be £9,535 per year. The other area is living costs. Now, living costs essentially covers absolutely everything that isn't specifically the tuition fee. So living costs are and can include accommodation and bills. So that might be university halls or private rented accommodation, or even if you're living at home or in your own home, accommodation and bills. It also covers food, travel, clothes, study equipment. So books, pens, paper, everything like that comes under the banner of living costs. If we look at approximate prices and approximate costs that you're going to be looking at, accommodation in university halls starts at just over £115 per week. That will be for a room in a shared flat. Obviously, accommodation can go up depending on on where you're living. So in university halls, although we start at 115, you can go. The average is probably about 160, but some of the high end accommodation may be getting towards the £200 a week. But it's important to know that there are rooms and there is accommodation available at the lower rate. If you're living at home, obviously your accommodation may be cheaper. If you're living in private rented, then obviously your accommodation may vary as well. Weekly food shops, we tend to anticipate anywhere between £30 and £50 per week as a basic level, a basic cost for food and general upkeep. Gym membership is affordable at £15 a month if a student wants to join the gym and get involved in any activities there. You can eat on campus, relatively good value, I suppose, good value at £2.50 starting point there. Theatre tickets for Derby around £5, and all cinema tickets from around £8.50. So very good affordable prices within in Derby and the Derby area. Next slide, please. Okay, so the support available comes in various areas, and we will have a look at these in detail specifically. So there's the tuition fee loan, which, as it suggests, is the loan that pays for the tuition fee. That's all that does. So if your fees are 9,535, the loan is 9,535, and that's the tuition fee loan. Maintenance loan is the living cost loan, so that's the amount of money that's paid to the students. If you're studying an allied health course, so nursing, occupational therapy, diagnostic radiography, and courses like that, you can receive additional support from the NHS, so the National Health Service. Also, most, if not all, universities will offer some kind of bursary or scholarship to their students, and we'll have a look at those as we go through the presentation. Okay, so in detail, the tuition fee loan. So tuition fees from September 2025 are going to be £9,535 per year. Therefore, the tuition fee loan will also be £9,535 per year. If you take out the loan, you don't need to pay your course fees up front. Essentially, what will happen is when you apply for the loan, that amount of money is paid direct to the university by the student loans company. So it's one of the only elements of support that doesn't land in the student's bank account directly. It's paid direct to the university. So there's nothing for the student to do with the tuition fee loan. It is a direct payment from the student loans company to the university. It's non-income assessed, so there's no assessment of household income for the tuition fee loan. If you want to take out the loan, you can take out the loan. There's no assessment of any level of income for that. Be mindful, if you don't take out the loan, then you will need to pay your tuition fees up front on an annual basis. So If you choose not to take out the loan, just be mindful that you will be responsible for paying the tuition fees to the university yourself. The maintenance loan, the living cost loan. So these are the figures based on current academic year 24/5. We're expecting an uplift in 25/6 of about just over 3%. In the same way that the tuition fee loan or the tuition fee is going up from this year to next. So these figures, but with an increase of around 3%. So if a student is living away from the parental home, then the maximum they can receive is £10,227. Now that's based on a household income under £25,000, and we will have a look at some of these figures in more detail in the next couple of slides. So maximum 10,227. If a student is living at home and commuting to university, the maximum is 8,610. So there's still a loan available, even if you're living at home, even if you're living at home locally. There's still loans available. Slightly more if you're living away from home, because the expectation is that your accommodation is going to be higher. If you're living at home, your accommodation costs would be anticipated to be significantly lower. However, you may have increased commuting costs. So it's a bit of a balance between living at home, living away from home, but that's reflected in the rates that are available. These rates can be slightly higher if you're studying one of the allied health courses, because they are classed as longer courses. So rather than being, for example, a 40-week academic year, they're often up to like almost like a 50-week academic year. So for nursing and associated courses, you may see that these figures, do increase slightly higher than what is quoted. Okay, so like we've said, the higher rate for away from home and living at home is 10,227 and the 8,610. At the other end of that scale is the lower rate. So that's for household incomes that are assessed over £65,000. So the minimum rate for living away from home is 4,767. The minimum rate for living at home is 3,790. Now, in between the top rate and the lower rate are any number of figures based on the actual household income. So what we've got on the screen is just a few bands just to give you a general, ballpark figure of what you would be looking at if your household income, for example, was around £45,000 and you're living away from home, you'd get 7,304 or thereabouts. If your household income was about 42,500, then you get somewhere between the 8,035 and the 7,304. There's no set bands. It is your maintenance loan is calculated by the exact amount of gross household income. So if we can have a look at the next slide, we can see how you can find that information out. So there is a student funding calculator, and it lives on gov.uk. So you can either navigate there through gov.uk, education and learning, student finance calculator. Any kind of internet search on any of the keywords, student funding finance calculator, it will take you straight here. It asks you 5 questions and only 5 questions. It asks you what year you're starting. It asks you what type of student you are, so UK full-time. Asks you when your course starts. At the moment, it would have been updated for academic year 24/5, so there'll be no option for 25/6, but don't let that put you off. Just click the option for 24/5. It's as near as makes no difference when it comes to the figures that it will present you with. It will ask you where you're going to be living, so at home or away from home, so just 2 choices there. And it will ask you what your annual household income is, so that is parental household income. We'll have a look at how it's assessed, but for most students that will mean parental household income. So put a figure in there and it will give you an answer. It will tell you what your tuition fee will be. Now the tuition fee based on 9,250, because that's what it currently is this academic year. So don't worry too much about the tuition fee loan. You will always be entitled to whatever the tuition fee is. You will always be entitled to that amount as a loan. The maintenance loan will be a very simple calculation based on where you're living, so home or away from home, and what your household income is. So the maintenance loan will be based on that. So this will give you, based on 5 questions, it will give you a really clear idea of what your maintenance loan is going to be. If your household income's under 25,000, you'll get the maximum. If it's over 65, you'll get the minimum. But any figure in between, it will give you it will give you an accurate figure of what your maintenance loan could be. So a really useful tool. Pre-entry, so pre-application. So, I suppose almost 3 months away from the application opening and nine months away from university starting, or even 10 months away, you can have a really good idea of what's going to be available to you. So really useful tool, really simple to use. So I would really advise that you have, spend a few minutes and have a look at that. Okay. So the assessment for support. So essentially what we're looking at here is how your student funding is assessed. For most full-time undergraduate students. So for most of the audience this evening, I would think, if you're under 25, Student Finance England will look to assess you on your parental household income. If parents are separated or divorced, it's the income of the natural parent that you normally live with. And if that parent is remarried or lives with a partner, then it is their income as well. So any variation on the family unit, so it could be mum and dad, it could be mum and stepdad, dad and stepmum, it could be any variation, of the family unit. If you're living with just one parent, then it's just that parent's income who is assessed. Anyone else in the household, siblings, so brothers, sisters, their income is disregarded. It is only the income of the parent. So Student Finance England only ever assess the income of what they call the sponsor, and the sponsor is only ever a parent or parents, or it's a partner if the student is eligible for independent status, which is the second half of this slide. So independent status, so you are dependent if you're under 25. You can be independent, and what independent means is that you're assessed on your own circumstances. So you're not assessed on parental income. You are assessed as the student. So to be eligible for independent status, you can be over 25 on the first day of the academic year. So if you're over 25, then purely by date of birth, you are an independent student. Regardless of age, if you're self-supporting or you've been self-supporting for 3 years prior to the start of the course. So for example, you start university and you're 21, you've been working full time since you were 18, and you can provide evidence of this to Student Finance England that you've been supporting yourself financially for 3 years, then regardless of age, they will class you as an independent student. If you're married, regardless of age, you're independent. If you have a child, if you're estranged from your parents, again, regardless of age, you can be classed as independent. If you've got no living parents, you will automatically be classed as independent. Sometimes there's an evidence requirement from SFE, so they may ask you for information or evidence around estrangements, or if you're telling them you've got a child, they may look for a birth certificate or evidence of child benefit. But a very simple evidence requirements for independent status. But if you're under 25, living with parents, not been working for 3 years, you're not married, you don't have a child, then you will be classed as dependent. Therefore, you will be assessed on parental household income. But any of these conversations can be had with SFE at the appropriate time. But just to give you an idea of how funding is assessed. Okay, so applying for your student funding. So the next big step along the way. The application itself is a single point of application for tuition fee and living costs. So you don't apply for your tuition fees, then apply for your maintenance loan. It's a single point of application for all of your student funding. For students starting in September 2025, the application will open, and we have a provisional date of the 1st of March 2025. So that is when we expect and we anticipate that the application will go live. So you can apply for your student funding 9 months before the start of the course. So 9 months before you start in September. There is a deadline that you'll often see quoted, and you might hear about it. Your school or your college may talk to you about a deadline for application. It may be part of a UCAS correspondence, or you may see it bandied around. But there is a deadline of May. So it opens in March. There's a deadline of May, and they'll say, so long as you apply by the end of May, then we'll guarantee you funding by September. So yeah, this is a deadline, but it's essentially quite a soft deadline. It just means that if you apply before the end of May, that they will guarantee that your funding is in place for September. It isn't, however, an absolute deadline. You can apply for your funding up to 9 months after the start of the course. So if you start your course in September 25, you could, if your circumstances dictated, or if you wanted to, you could apply for your funding as late as May 2026. There's nothing to stop you doing that. We wouldn't recommend you do that. We'd always recommend that you apply well in advance. And just to be really clear, and it's sometimes it's sometimes not very clear, but you don't need to have a confirmed place at university in order to apply for your student funding. Don't wait until you've got a place on a course. Don't wait until you know exactly what you're doing. Don't wait until the summer. Don't wait until you've gone through clearing or you've got your exam results. Apply for your funding as soon as you can. If it opens on the 1st of March, you can apply for your student funding on the 1st of March, regardless of of how many universities you looked at, how many courses you've looked at. If you've narrowed it down to 6 universities and 8 courses, just pick your best guess. The application won't let you complete, or it won't complete the application without you having the name of a university and the name of a course. So give it your best guess. if you can't decide what your best guess is, get someone else to guess for you. It doesn't really matter. Student funding is the same nationally, whether you go, wherever you go to university in the country, the funding is the same. So put your best guess on the application. The only really important thing to note is that in September, when you enroll at university, you just need to make sure that the university that you're enrolling at is the same as the university on your application. Because when you enroll, the university will notify Student Finance England that you have enrolled. Therefore, the university that you've enrolled at needs to match the university on your application. If it doesn't match the university on your application, then it may delay your funding by a few weeks while the systems sort themselves out. So at the point of application, you can put whichever university you want, put your best guess down. If it's still the same when you enroll, there's nothing you need to do. If it changes when your exam results come through, or through clearing, or through any period of time through the application process, just log back on, change the name of the university and or the course. It will update overnight, nothing more to do, but just make sure that the universities match at the point of enrolment. That's just really important. Okay, so just skipping forward a little bit. So you've applied for your student funding. It's all been approved, everything's come through, and then you enroll at university in September. So at that point, your loans are paid in 3 installments. At the point of enrollment, and so after your application, you will have received a payment schedule, so you'll know exactly what you're getting it and when you're getting it, so there won't be any surprises. So 3 installments, you get a payment in September, payment in January, and a payment in April, so you get a third of your funding on each payment. The January and the April payments are absolutely set in stone. You will get a date and you will get an amount, on your schedule, and those dates will not change. The September amount, the amount will be absolutely correct, but the date may change. They will quote a date which will be the first possible day of the academic year. So say the first day of the academic year is the 14th of September, and that's a Monday. If you enroll on that Monday, you won't get your money on that day. It takes 3 to 5 days after enrolment to get your funds. So although your payment schedule may say Monday, the 14th of September, you may not get your money until the Thursday or the Friday. So just be mindful of that. If you're enrolling on the Monday, you may not get your money for 3 to 5 days. So the dates on your payment schedule, will be correct to a certain extent. January and April, absolutely set in stone, but September, May, you may receive your payment a few days after the date that's stated. It depends when you enroll. And again, just to be clear at this point, and we will move on to repayments, that loans, nothing's repayable until after the course is completed. So while you're studying, for the 3 years or 4 years when you're studying, although you're borrowing the money from the student loans company, you're not making any repayments at that point. In the second half of this slide, again, when you do fall into repayment, and that's normally in the April after you graduate, you pay nothing back until you start earning £25,000 a year. So earnings under £25,000, there are no repayments. So the threshold is £25,000 for repayment. And you pay 9% of your income over that threshold. So 9% of your income equates to £7.50 per month for every £1,000 you earn over the threshold, on the basis that if you're earning £26,000, 9% of £1,000 being £90, so over 12 months, £7.50 a month. But we do have some slides going forward, which will give you a clearer idea of what repayments will look like for you in the real world in the future. The repayment term is 40 years. So whatever you borrowed, there's a maximum repayment term of 40 years. Any remaining balances after that period are written off. So, some students will pay all of their loans back. Some students will pay none of their loans back. Most students will pay some of their loans back. But regardless of how much you've repaid after 40 years, any remaining balances, so any actual loans, any interest, or any balances at all after 40 years are written off, regardless of how much is outstanding. So next slide, please, and we'll start to have a look at what repayments really look like. So in really simple terms, up to £25,000, the monthly repayment is zero. So you pay nothing back per month. Bear in mind that you make repayments as stoppages through your wages. So you don't receive your wages and then you've got to go and pay the student loans company. By the time you get paid, your loan would have been, your repayment would have been taken along with income tax and national insurance. And we'll have a look at that in a second. But again, based on the 9% over the £25,000, like I said, £26,000 is £1,000 over the threshold. 9% of £1,000 is £90 a year, which is £7.50 a month over 12 months. So the more you earn, the more you will repay. If you're earning £30,000 a year, you're £5,000 over the threshold. So you're £37.50 a month. If you're earning £40,000 a year, you're £112.50 a month. So absolutely, the more you earn, the more you will repay. But obviously, the more you earn, the more you will be receiving in your wages. Therefore, you'll be in a better position to make these repayments. But it's really important to kind of understand the context of what these repayments will mean for you in the real world. It's important to know that it's not seen as debt. The government don't see it as debt. Banks don't see it as debt. Lenders don't see it as debt. It won't affect any of your credit score. It doesn't affect your ability to get a mortgage. It's not seen as debt. It's an amount of money owed to the government that's repaid based on income. If you have no income, you make no repayment. So it's really clear to understand that. And if we can have the next slide, please, that hopefully will just put a little bit of context into what these repayments look like and may feel like in the real world. So, like I've said before, the monthly repayment is taken at source. So it's taken out of your gross income before you receive your monthly net income. So again, if we pick the £30,000, for example, so you're earning £30,000 gross, you're going to be paying £37.50 in maintenance loan. In student loans back to the government, but you'll also be paying £290 in income tax and £145 in national insurance. So those will be your deductions before you receive your wages. If you're earning £40,000, again, absolutely, your student loan repayments will increase to £112.50, but your income tax will increase to £457. Your national insurance will increase to £229. I suppose what we're trying to kind of make sense of is that regardless of how much you borrow in your student loan, so you could have tuition fee loan and maintenance loan for 3 years, for 4 years. So, you could be £50,000-60,000 that are your repayments, but don't focus too much on what's outstanding. Obviously, be mindful of what's outstanding and, and be aware of what's outstanding, but the focus really is on the repayments. If you average, £30,000 through those 40 years, you're going to be paying, you're going to be paying a fraction of what you borrowed, really. But again, a little bit of context as to it's not going to be the most significant. It's certainly not the most significant deduction from your gross salary, and it probably won't be the most significant, thing that you will pay for, going through your working life. So just be mindful of that. Just, if you have a look at the numbers there, certainly as I look at them there, then the monthly repayment is not the most significant, outgoing, and it's not the most significant deduction. And also, repayment terms, it's 40 years, which, 40 years is 40 years. There's no escaping that, but you'll pay income and tax and national insurance forever, but you won't pay your monthly repayment for your student loan forever, if that's any kind of reassurance. Yeah. So just going back to the nursing and allied health, healthcare courses. So we're looking at nursing, occupational therapy, diagnostic radiography, and I think we now extend to physiotherapy and midwifery. If you're doing any of those courses, you can be eligible to receive additional support from the NHS Learning Support Fund. Now, this support is non-means tested, so there's no assessment of household income, and more importantly, is non-repayable. So it's not a loan. It's not a loan. It is it's a grant essentially. So if you're eligible for this, you will receive it each year, but you won't ever have to pay it back. So, for example, if you're doing nursing, you'll get a £5,000 training grant. There's no other assessment of eligibility other than that you are on that course. So £5,000 is a training grant, and there's £2,000 parental support. So for students who have children or students who have a child, so, a child or children, you can also receive an additional £2,000. So there's also additional support for travel and accommodation expenses whilst you're on placement. But for a dependent student, for example, with no children, so no dependents, you will get the £5,000 training grant in addition to your student funding from the student loans company. However, the NHS support is non-repayable. From an application point of view, it is a separate application through the NHS. In order to apply for this support, you need first to have applied for your student funding through Student Finance England. So from a timescale point of view, the NHS application doesn't open until around July. So the student funding application opens in March. Deadline is the end of May if you want to guarantee your funding in place for September. The NHS funding opens in July. on the basis that there is no assessment to take place other than the fact that this is the course that you're doing and you're eligible for student funding. They normally ask you as part of the application just to send a scanned copy of your student funding document. So that's the only criteria for eligibility. But again, just to bear in mind when you're looking at what you're going to be entitled to from a funding point of view, if you're on a nursing or allied healthcare course, you'll be eligible at the very least for the training grant, if not more. So have a look at that. Any kind of internet search on NHS LSF will take you straight to that information. Okay, so when you're looking for information about what's available to you and what's out there, there's loads of information online, individual university websites. There's the student funding calculator that we referred to on gov.uk. There is Student Finance England information on a site called the Student Room, and then gov.uk. That's where the student funding calculator lives, and that's where the student funding application lives. So at the point of application, go on to gov.uk, under Education and Learning, Student Finance, and the application is there. And like we've said, single point of application for all of your funding. The only caveat to that is that if you're doing a nursing course or an allied healthcare course, it's the separate application for the NHS. But if you're not doing one of those courses, all of your funding, single point of application through Student Finance England. Okay, essential tips. So realistically, the most important one always is apply for your student funding as soon as possible. Again, as we said, don't wait to find out what you're doing or where you're going. If the application's open in March, apply in March. Single point of application. Start with the first question, end with the last question. It will ask you a lot of questions. In your first year, the application process has never met you before, so it will ask you a lot of questions, about yourself, about the course that you're doing, about the funding that you're applying for. It will ask you questions about your sponsors, so that may well be your parents. So it asks you to nominate your sponsors. So if your sponsors are your parents, then it asks you to nominate them. It will ask you for a name and an email address. Your sponsors, parents, will then get contacted by SFE, asking them to provide details of their household income. So it's a single point of application, and it will be a lot of questions, but you don't have to do it in one sitting. You can go through the first section, spend 10 minutes with the first section, just putting your name and address, date of birth in, and then just, save and exit. And then the next day, go back in, do another section. So you don't have to do it all at once. But it's relatively straightforward. In second year and third year, it's just a reapplication for your student funding. So you'll get presented with the previous year's application. You'll be asked if there's any significant changes. If you say no, then your funding application is done. So first year is a big one. Second and third year, not so much, but always apply as soon as you can. Because there's so much information out there and you can apply early, it's really, really useful to work out a budget plan before you start university. It doesn't have to be anything, anything too complicated. 2 columns, one column's got your income, one column's got your outgoings. Take one figure from the other and just see what that looks like for you. Budgets are very personal things. They're very specific to the individual. So have a look, see what you've got coming in. You'll know what you've got coming out. So just have a look at a budget, just so you've got no unpleasant surprises or unnecessary surprises when you enroll at university, and then you start to pay for things based on your income. Open a student bank account. If for no other reason than just see what they will offer you as any incentives, any freebies when you open that account. If you're happy with your current bank, fantastic. Have a chat with them about what they can offer you as a student, because they will all want you to put your student funding into their accounts, for the 3 or 4 years whilst you're at university. So it's worth a conversation, and see what works for you. See what works for you. Most importantly, we always say don't panic. Don't be overwhelmed. There is a lot of information out there. You'll be going through your UCAS application. You're still doing your studies at the minute. You'll have exams going on. You might have certain reservations or certain concerns about, leaving home and coming to university. Your parents may be feeling the same. There's a lot to think about, a lot to go through. But from a student funding point of view, just kind of narrow it down to what it really is. It's a single point of application. It'll ask you a lot of questions, so just answer those questions. And when you get to the end of the questions, your funding will be done and it will be in place for when you start university in September. So, be clear on what you can borrow. Make sure that you're accessing all available income. Make sure that at the end of the day what the repayments are going to look like for you, and make sure that you're comfortable with all of that. So just make sure. Like I said, there's a lot of information out there, and when you're at university, you can come and talk to someone about me if you've got any, like me, if you've got any concerns about what you've applied for and what it means and what you're receiving. So any doubts, any questions, just come and talk to us or someone, like our team at the university. Okay, so if you want to get in touch with us, we are student money advisors. So we're a student money advice team within the student life team in student services. We have a nice simple email address of smart@derby.ac.uk. So contact us after this event, with any questions that you've got. You don't have to be coming here to ask us a question. So, if it's pre-entry, if you just got any questions about the information tonight, or if you get a couple of months down the line and think, I remember going to that webinar, but I really can't remember what was said, drop us a line, drop us an email. We've got loads of information that exists that we can send you. More than happy to send you a copy of any of our open day presentations, our funding presentations, anything you want. Or if you're coming to an open day to see us, chances are we'll be presenting, a funding presentation at those events. So again, come and talk to us, come and see what we can let you know. And then the next slide, I believe, is a bit of information about events that we've got up and coming at the university. So this Saturday, 14th of December, we've got an open house. So just a nice, relaxed, open doors. Just come in, have a look around, see what the university is like, have a relaxed tour of the campus, have a look around the accommodation. So just a nice, if you want to pop in. It's just an open house. So doors are open and you're very welcome. 11th of January, we've got an open day. So it's a more in-depth event, and you can book online. There's a QR code on the screen now that you can zap, and it will take you straight to the booking, or you can have a look on the university website just about the open days. At the open days, loads of information, loads of people from various academic areas and support areas. So ourselves from student services will be there. All other areas of admissions and accommodation and all the academic areas will be there. You can have a look at the campus. You can have a look at accommodation. There's no end of people that you can talk to. Lots of people with a lot of information and a lot of expertise. So, any questions that you may have academically, from a support point of view, from accommodation, there will be lots of people at these events who you can talk to. So again, book on one, next one, 11th of January. Highly recommend that you come to one. I certainly enjoy working the events. A lot of my colleagues that I know, we all enjoy working the events. It's a great opportunity for us to meet our future students and be able to have a chat with students and parents about what's going on and what support's available. Okay, and that's all from me. So I think I'm going to pass back to Charlotte, and hopefully we'll have some questions that hopefully we'll be able to answer for you.
Thank you, Rob, for a fantastic presentation. I know that sometimes with student finance, it can feel like a lot of information all at once, but it's really nice to hear that we have lots of support available at the university.
Yep.
So we're going to move on to the Q&A now, and we've got a few questions. Some of them you might have answered throughout the presentation, but I'm going to ask them anyway, just so that everyone's confident with the answers that they've received. So the first one is for private funding, such as their parents paying for tuition fees. Will that be done in a one-off payment, or can it be paid in installments as well?
Normally, the payments are taken in 5 monthly installments. So, as far as I'm aware, they start in October. So it'll be October, November, December, January, February. So it's split into 5 installments. So currently, based on 9,250, it's 5 installments of 1,850. The fees are obviously going up to 9,535. So divide that by 5, and there's your monthly payment over 5 months. It's not that the payments are never set in stone. If you want to pay over an extended period during the academic year, it's just a conversation with the income team in the finance office. So just have a chat with them. Again, if you can't find their details on the university website, you're always welcome to email us at smart@derby, and we can signpost you, or we can send any questions on to them. But absolutely normally, but yeah, if the worry is that it's the full £9,500 at the point of entry or the point of enrolment, absolutely not. There's no payment requirement at the point of enrolment. So you enroll in September, and there's no requirement for payment until at least October. And then it's a standard payment plan of 5 months, but that can be extended depending on circumstances. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. Another question is, do you get student funding for every year for an integrated master's?
Yes. So integrated master's is essentially a 3-year undergraduate degree with a 4th year of of master's study, of postgraduate study. And although it's postgraduate study, because it's an integrated master's, it is funded as 4 years of undergraduate funding. So you'd receive the full tuition fee loan and maintenance loan and any other support in year 1, year 2, year 3, which is the undergraduate, and in year 4, which is the integrated postgraduate year. So I suppose simple answer is yes, it's a 4-year course and there's 4 years of that funding. Yeah.
Thank you. Someone has asked, how do I apply for the nursing and allied healthcare grant?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, like we said, it's direct to the NHS. So it's the only bit that isn't funded by Student Finance England. So it's not that application. So it's the NHS directly. So NHS Learning Support Fund. So if you're any kind of internet search on NHS Learning Support Fund, or you can abbreviate it NHS LSF, it will take you straight to that application point. There's information about it, but you won't be able to apply until it's normally around July, because there's no income assessment. There's very little for the NHS to assess. They just need to know who you are, what course you're studying, and they normally ask you for evidence that you're eligible for student funding, because that's one of the eligibility criteria. You've got to be eligible for student funding from Student Finance England to be eligible for the NHS support. It's just a basic eligibility requirement. So you apply for that. So you tell them who you are, what course you're doing, and here's evidence of my student funding. That provisionally approves your funding from the NHS. What triggers the funding? So for Student Finance England, what triggers your maintenance loan and tuition fee loan is your enrolment at university. With the NHS support, what triggers it is again, it's a similar thing. The university will notify the NHS that you're active on the course, and that turns your funding to live. From a payment point of view, your maintenance loan is paid, like we said, September, January and April. The NHS payments are slightly staggered, so they're normally paid in November, February and like May, June time. So they're paid, kind of in between the student loan payments, which is good in a way, because it's better for budgeting purposes. But again, like with SFE, you will get a payment schedule from the NHS telling you exactly what you're getting and when you're getting it. So a very simple application. But don't really look for it until June, July time.
Thank you. Someone has asked, do you offer any sports scholarships?
Yeah, there are sports scholarships available at the university. It's not anything that I deal with, but if you have a look on the university website, you can type in the word scholarships, I think. But if you look at Team Derby or any of the sports sites or any of that information on the university website, you will find that there. So I suppose if you go onto the site and just do a search on Team Derby or sports scholarships, then it's all there. It's all there.
Thank you. Someone has asked just for clarification around how the maintenance loans are distributed throughout the year.
Yep. So it's 3 installments over the year. So if you take your full amount, equates to 100% of your maintenance loan. The percentages, because they can never do a full 33.33 recurring split. So it's paid 34% in the first payment, and then it's 33%, 33%. So you get 34% in September, 33 in January, 33 in April. But for the sake of a few pounds either way, just chop it into 3. So if your maintenance loan is £9,000, then you'll get £3,000 in September, £3,000 in January, and £3,000 in April. So, and again, that kind of sits with your accommodation. So if you're living in halls, your halls payments will kind of be due shortly after each of your maintenance loan payments. So again, if there's any concerns about paying your tuition fees up front, if there's any concerns about paying your halls fees up front, the university will never ask you to pay for your accommodation until your student funding has been received. So they won't ask you to pay in September, on the day of enrollment, if they know that you're not going to get your funding until middle or the end of September. So don't be concerned about that.
Thank you. Someone has said, how will they be supported if they are looking at other accommodation in their second and third year? So I assume what they mean is that they are a first year student, they go into university under accommodation in the first year, and they go through our own payment plans. And what support is there if they decide to move into other accommodation in their second and third year?
Right, well, in what, university accommodation or private rented accommodation?
I'm going to assume private rented, but maybe we could look at both scenarios just in case.
So wherever you live, whether it's in university accommodation or in private rented accommodation, or then student funding is not dependent on where you live. Obviously, there are the two bands if you're living at home or away from home, and those bands differ because of the anticipated difference in those costs. But your maintenance loan is not specific, it's not reliant on you living in university halls. If you live in university halls, or if you live in private rented accommodation, you will receive the same amount of maintenance loan based on your household income. So in your first year, you may be in halls, and your maintenance loan arrives in your account, and you will use that money to pay the university because you're in university halls. If in the second year you move into private rented accommodation, the only difference will be your maintenance loan will land in your bank account exactly the same as it did in your first year. It's just that rather than pay it to the university for your halls, you'll be paying it to a letting agent or to a landlord for your private rented accommodation. So it doesn't matter where you're living, whether you're in private rented or whether you're in university halls, your maintenance loan, it's not dependent on that. You'll still receive the money, and then when it's in your bank account, it's down to you, which is why we talk about the importance of budgeting. It's down to you to make sure that money gets paid to the right place at the right time. Hopefully that answers that question.
Perfect, thank you. We've had a couple of questions that are kind of around similar things, so I'm going to try and merge them into one.
Okay.
So if you could just reiterate, just for a final confirmation, where they can apply for the maintenance and tuition fee loans.
Yeah.
Is it the same application?
Yeah.
And when the deadline is?
Okay, perfect. So it's a single point of application through Student Finance England. So it's through gov.uk, so through the government website. So you can navigate, step by step, gov.uk, education and learning, student finance. Once you've clicked in there, it will have a button that will say apply here for student finance. There'll be a big green button that says apply here. If you click on it today, then you'll only be able to apply for funding for the current academic year 24-25. We anticipate that the application for 25-26 will go live on the 1st of March. That's the date that we've been given. Sometimes they're a couple of weeks late. It depends on how their systems are working. But from the 1st of March, that's when we expect it to go live. So if all is well, 1st of March, go on to gov.uk, education and learning, student finance, apply here, and it will take you to the application for 2025-26. At that point, you'll still see the application for 24-25 because students can still apply for the current academic year based on the fact that you can apply for 9 months after the start of the course. But what you will be looking for is 25-26. So that's what you click on. It will ask you to create an account, and then it will ask you lots and lots of questions. Like I've said, it's a single point of application. So it will say to you, do you want to apply for a tuition fee loan? Yes, please. Do you want to apply for a maintenance loan? Yes. And then it will ask you if you want to apply for the higher rate. And what that means is that it will take you through the means tested process. So if you say yes to that, that's when it will ask you about sponsors, so parents. So you nominate your name and email address. Parents will get an email from Student Finance England to provide their information. So it's just a single point of application, just one application. You don't have to go looking around for multiple areas. It's just the one. So it'll open 1st of March, as far as we know. The deadline, the long deadline will be May 2026, but don't wait until then to apply, obviously, because you won't have any funding in place. The deadline where they guarantee that your funding will be in place for September is normally the last day of May. So if you apply by the last day of May, it just gives them a long time. The earlier you apply, the quicker it gets done. If you apply in March, it'll probably take 3 or 4 weeks to do your application. The longer you go along the process, the more people are applying for student funding, and the more people that apply for student funding, the longer it takes them. So as long as you apply at the first 3 months of the application, so March, April, May, gives them loads of time to assess your application before September. If you were to apply in August, then there'll probably be several million people in the queue before you. If you apply in August, it might take 8, 10, 12 weeks to get your funding application through. So if you apply in August, you may not get your funding through until October. So apply as early as you can. Apply as early as you can is always the key message there.
Thank you. I think we've got about 5-10 minutes left, and we've got a couple of questions left, so I think we'll be able to go through them. Someone has asked, how do I apply for a bursary? Now, they've not specified which bursary, so just in general.
Okay, most universities will have some kind of bursary. So sometimes it'll be called a bursary, sometimes it'll be a scholarship. It's really important that you're mindful of these and you're looking at what's available at individual universities. So have a look where you're looking, see what's available. Sometimes they're automatically assessed, sometimes they're application based, sometimes they're based on household income. Sometimes they're based on academic achievement. So it depends on the university and what they're offering. At the moment, in the current academic year here, we've got the university bursary, which is a bursary of up to £1,000 and it's assessed based on household income. If your household income is under £25,000, you get £1,000 bursary. If it's between 25,000 and 36,000, you get a £600 bursary. If it's over the £36,000 threshold, you won't get a bursary. Important thing to note about our university bursary at the moment, and we're assuming it will extend into 25/6 as well, it's that it's automatically assessed, so you don't have to apply for it. How it works is that you apply to Student Finance England for your student funding. They assess your student funding and your household income. At the point of enrolment, they share that household income information with the university based on consents that are set up with parents or sponsors to share that information. So it's shared with the university, and the university uses that income information to assess you for a bursary. So if you're eligible for a bursary, you will receive a bursary. So that's how it works here. Again, if you go on the university website, type in the word bursary, it will take you to all the information about the university bursary. But again, just be mindful, if you're looking at other universities, have a look at what they've got available there. If there's an application-based one and you've had a look at it and you're going to be eligible, just make sure that you apply. What you don't want to ever do is have a bursary that you're eligible for, but you didn't apply for it, because that's something that you may lose out on. And there may be a deadline date for the application. And if you go beyond that date, you won't be able to go back and claim that funding. So have a look what's out there. Make sure you know what's available to you. Make sure you're receiving everything that you're entitled to. But just be reassured that the one at the university that's available, and it's all on the website at the minute, have a look at it. It's automatically assessed. So if you're eligible, you'll get it. If you're not eligible, then you won't have missed out.
Thank you. We've got another question. Going back to what you said about the natural parent
Yes.
the income assessed. Someone has said that they live with their parents who are separated on a 50-50 split. So
Okay.
who would they put down on their application?
Okay, and as part of the application, it's entirely at the discretion of the student to nominate their sponsor. So if it's a 50-50 split, it's entirely up to the student. The terminology that SFE use is they put it down to the natural parent the student normally lives with. So if there is a parent, then that's the natural parent the student normally lives with. So that normally kind of drives its own conclusion. If it's a 50-50 split, then it's entirely up to the student to nominate their sponsor or sponsors. So they will ask you the question, give us the details of your sponsor, and it's entirely up to the student. Now, common sense would dictate that you nominate the sponsor with the lowest household income. That's what would make sense. If you've got one parent earning £60,000, one parent earning £25,000, the sensible, realistic option would be to nominate the sponsor with the lowest income. Therefore, you would receive, the higher rate of the maintenance loan. But it's entirely down to you, as the student applying for your student funding, entirely at your discretion, which of your parents you nominate as your sponsor. So that decision is yours and yours alone.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. I think that wraps up all of our questions. But like Rob said earlier, if you have any special questions or you think of any questions later on, or even in a few months' time, you can contact him by emailing smart@derby.ac.uk, or you can come to one of our upcoming open days and speak to the team directly if you'd prefer to have a face-to-face conversation. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. That concludes today's webinar. And we hope you all have a good evening. Thank you, Rob.